And here's what's interesting about our influences. When we leave them unchecked, they have this way of becoming our biggest priority, even if they don't actually matter that much to us.
Hi there, I'm Vanessa Kaiser, a ranch girl turned social worker, business leader, and now entrepreneur. I'm passionate about diving into organization, leadership, personal growth, and efficiency. Around here, we call it rhythmic living, that continuous cycle of assessing the season of life that we're in and creating habits, routines, and processes that serve us best. This show is for the busy, the dreamers, the tired, the go-getters, those who want to live fully, grow steadily, and feel inspired each day. Welcome to the Inspiring Heights podcast.
If I were to think back on my career, I could honestly tell you that strategic planning was one of my favorite parts in each stage. When I was younger, new to the field, strategic planning gave me the excitement and the focus that I really longed for. And then as I grew in my career and got to sit on the leadership side of the strategic planning table, the excitement continued to grow as I then got to be a part of inspiring the team towards the new great things that were to come in the year ahead. But here's the real inside scoop. I loved strategic planning because it also inspired me in my own life outside of the four walls of work. I learned that being thoughtful about creating plans, setting clear goals, and then having people around me that were really read in on what I was passionate about and what I was pursuing made a huge impact on my ability to actually see those new habits, those lofty goals, and those big dreams through to fruition. When we hear the word strategic planning, we often categorize it as a corporate concept, right? And I'm not going to lie, I do the same thing. The word feels a little stuffy, feels a little suit and tie, and maybe a little sterile. But here's the thing, strategy actually matters. I would go as far as to say, in fact, that good strategy is the difference between a plan that will succeed and a plan that will fail. So starting this week, we are launching a 3-part podcast series on strategy and planning. It's going to be real, it's going to be inspiring, I hope, and it's going to be very practical. Stick with me. I am confident that you will find some logistical and inspirational nuggets that you've been looking for. And who knows, maybe we can come up with a less stuffy word to describe strategic planning by the end of all this. Have you ever grabbed a bottle of pain reliever for stubborn cramps or popped an allergy pill when pollen season hits, only to find that you didn't achieve that lasting relief you were looking for? Same, girl. Same. And here's the thing. Allergy meds completely knock me out. And I would honestly much rather be using something that tackles the root cause and not just the symptoms. That's why I was so excited when my girlfriend introduced me to Earthly. Since I've been using their tinctures, I haven't needed ibuprofen for cramps. Seriously, it's been a major game changer, and I want the whole world to know about it. Earthly Wellness is a family-owned company on a mission to change the way that we think about healthcare. Their journey started with finding natural solutions for their daughter's health, and now they're helping thousands and thousands of families do the exact same thing. They believe that everyone deserves access to natural, effective remedies and the freedom to choose their own path to wellness. From herbal tinctures, my personal favorite that we use every single day in the Kaiser household, to natural cleaning products and so much more, Earthly has something for every home. Now, the link gets a little complicated, so check out the show notes to find it and search for coupons that are active at the time that this podcast is dropping. Today, we're going to spend our time talking about how strategy is actually really quite practical, extending far beyond just the corporate business walls that we often categorize it into. So let's dive in. Number 1, strategy helps us get honest about what really matters. I know this goes without much saying, but I would be remiss if I didn't just bring it into the light at least a little bit. We are influenced by other people in significant ways. We often blame social media for this, and let's be honest, it is a major culprit, right? We hop on socials and we start scrolling and we see people say, like, I don't know, exercising in new gym clothes. And we're like, I need a new gym membership ASAP, and I for sure need those clothes. Or we see people who are showing us the most decorated and tidy parts of their home and we spiral, right? Like, yikes, I am the hugest failure when it comes to housekeeping. And this entire place needs redecorated like yesterday. But social media isn't the only culprit. We are also influenced by our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers, our families, TV, Pinterest, and I suppose, if we're kicking it kind of old school, Google. And here's what's interesting about our influences. When we leave them unchecked, they have this way of becoming our biggest priority, even if they don't actually matter that much to us. I have both seen and experienced this interesting tidbit, perhaps the most when it comes to planning for the season ahead. Setting goals around things that don't really matter. Prioritizing things that are out of alignment with our value and our vision because there are people around us that are pulling us towards that, even if they and us don't realize it. Here's the hard truth that most of us will be faced with at some point or another. When we set our goals based on the influence of other people, we will eventually come to a crossroads where either we are compromising our values and our vision, or we are abandoning the plans we put in place. And truth be told, neither way is very fun. But when we start with strategy, we are starting with our values and our vision. We set the lens in which all else from that point forward will flow through. And that helps us to quickly weed out what isn't really working for us. Sure, we can enjoy the scroll of looking at that boho themed kitchen or the tidy planner setups, but at the end of the day, starting with strategy helps us get honest about whether those things are for just pleasure or if they really do matter to us right now in this specific season. Number 2, strategy helps set our focus. Have you ever found yourself at the starting line of a new season where maybe you've jotted down like 10 goals and they're like all over the place, like popcorn, and maybe it feels a little miscombobulated, but also you're really excited, so you're going to run with it. And then about 3 weeks in, you find yourself panting and dropping goals like flies. Yeah, you, me, and about 1 billion other people who have used that method at some point in our lives for New Year's resolution planning. One of the things that can feel tricky when it comes to planning for the season ahead is that we have so much vying for our attention and it all feels so worthy. So we pursue it as such. This is where strategy comes into play. Strategy helps us look at the upcoming season through a more tempered lens. We are identifying the season at hand. We are naming our capacity. We're refamiliarizing ourselves with our values. We're checking in with our vision. And then we're setting our goals. The steps leading up to the goal setting are the bumpers that we miss when we just randomly write down 10 goals on December 31st, throw them in the air like confetti, and hope for the best for the entire year to come. Number 3, strategy helps us identify what's holding us up. Like I said, when we approach planning from a strategic posture, we are looking back to evaluate and ahead to assess before we jump into the actual planning portion. Both the act of looking back and looking ahead helps us zoom in on what barriers have been keeping us from success, however you might apply that word to your goals. You know I'm a sucker for good analogy, so I like to think of barriers like this. Imagine trying to set up a tent in the dark. You're driving those stakes into the ground that hold the tent down, and you hit something hard, and the stake just won't go any deeper. So at that point, there are kind of really 2 options, right? One is that you just stop driving the stakes and hope that the wind doesn't take the rain cover away or help the tent collapse on you in the middle of the night. Or you dig into the ground and you figure out what that hard thing is that's preventing you from driving the stakes. Now, just in case you've never been tenting in a rainstorm, let me just tell you that waking up soaking wet because rain cover got lost in the wind, it's just no way to camp, my friend. So we go digging, and what we find is going to have a direct impact on what we do next. Like if the hard spot that's keeping us from driving the stakes into the ground is a rock, we're going to uncover it and move it so the stakes can go on the ground, right? But if instead we find that we've set our tent on a pad of cement that just so happens to be covered with a light layer of dirt, we're going to move our tent because Sleeping on concrete does nothing for our mood that ensues after we've gotten rained on in the middle of the night. Life's like this. If the thing holding up our ability to say, get to work on time, is an alarm clock that's unreliable, our move to solve the issue is much, much, much different than if, after introspection, we discover that we're late every day because we actually dread walking into what we would identify as a toxic environment. I know this seems like a dramatic example. It is, of course, for effect, but you catch my thought, right? Understanding our barriers directly impacts how we step forward. And those steps, no matter how big or small, eventually add up to our larger picture of life. Jumping into planning for the season ahead can stir up all kinds of emotions: excitement, nervousness, and sometimes even a little dread. This is especially true if past plans have fallen flat. That's why I created a free resource for you: the 5 planning pitfalls and how to avoid them. There is so much noise out there about creating the perfect plan. But the truth is, if you can steer clear of just these 5 common pitfalls, you will cut through that noise and be on your way to building life-giving and fruitful plans. Grab your free guide today at inspiringheights.org/planning pitfalls or click the link in the show notes. Number 4, strategy helps us assess what's working. Sometimes we are going to hit the jackpot. We are going to find our stride, and when we do, we don't ever want to stop, right? Have you ever looked up in the middle of a season and been like, man, I feel like the communication between my spouse and I is going so well right now. I wish it was always like this. Or wow, I feel really alive at work. I wish it was like this all the time. When we pursue planning with strategy, we are no longer left to just hope for the best because we can actually identify what creates the best. This, again, comes through the assessment process, looking back and digging into the ins and outs of the best day ever type reality. Let me pause here and say I know that assessment is a little bit like using the word strategic planning. It feels unhuman lifelike, right? Like I'm talking business or social work ease to you. But hear me out. Assessment simply means reflection, pausing to consider the why. It's easy to walk through life with a deeply ingrained assumption that some seasons are going to be inherently good and some are going to be inherently hard, and there's no rhyme or reason for such seasons. We just have to endure them. The truth is, there will absolutely be things outside of our control that can impact the feel of our season. And also, we have a lot of choice and authority over our season. So when something is working, it's firing on all 4 cylinders, when we will spend just a tiny bit of time mulling over the why and the circumstances around it, we have a much better chance of replicating the good than we do if we just chalk it up to, well, sometimes you win. This concept leads us right into our 5th and final thought. Strategy helps us achieve what we want to achieve and get where we want to go. Remember at the beginning when I asked you to think back to one of those December 31st days when you had 10 goals all going separate directions with 0 strategy? Here's how our human brains have a tendency to work. We experience something like that, and then we're going to do one of a couple things, most likely, right? 1, we might give up on New Year's resolutions altogether because they don't work. Or 2, we're going to limit ourselves to say 1 or 2 goals because 10 is just too many. Or 3, we feel like what didn't work was that the goals were all sporadic. So we assume that if we maybe theme our year ahead, focus on just one thing instead of 10, we can have an unlimited number of goals related to that one thing and still be able to accomplish them because they're all headed in a similar direction. But here's the fun truth of it all. We can have goals that don't touch each other in any way, shape, or form and still accomplish them if we plan with strategy. Strategy helps us set a roadmap. It helps us determine what's important and when. It helps us see the bigger picture and then back into our months, our weeks, and our days with purpose. It gives us a better perspective on what's actually realistic and what will indeed stretch us too thin to make real impact or change. We no longer have to live bound by the New Year's resolution like mishaps that soured our taste for any sort of seasonal planning, because strategy gives us a different path. Now, I know not everyone is a strategic planning nerd like me, and thank goodness for that. But my hope is that in today's episode, and as we step through this planning series, you can take those nuggets, the bits and pieces of this puzzle that are inspiring and motivating for you, and start implementing them into your planning process. Because, friend, having a plan that was created with strategy helps us live a more present life. And at the end of the day, that is the biggest gift that a plan can give us.
And that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Do you have questions, comments, or insights on today's content? I would love to hear from you. You can DM me on Facebook or Instagram, or head over to our website, inspiringheights.org, and click on the Contact Us form. I will link all those locations here in the show notes. P.S. If you haven't already, I would love for you to leave a 5-star rating and a quick review of the podcast. This helps get our content in the hands of new listeners. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter and follow us on social media for rhythmic doses of inspiration. All right, friends, take a deep breath and be inspired where your feet are. Bye for now.